Welcome to Inaudible. My name is Jeremy Weiland, and I'm joined by my co-host, Ryan Masterson. On this podcast, we discuss the weird, beautiful channeled messages found in the archives of LL Research, an organization dedicated to sharing spiritual information with the world. You can find out more about LL Research at llresearch.org. The archives contain transcripts of messages from allegedly discarnate sources who claim to hail from an organization they call the Confederation of Planets in service to the infinite creator. If you would like an audio version of the transcripts, please subscribe to Ryan's other podcast, Living, Love, and Light, available on all platforms. Ryan and I will try to provide analysis and commentary on the philosophy described in these messages, identifying the common themes, and grappling with the application of this information to our human lives. Thanks for joining us on this journey. How's it going, Ryan?
Good morning, Jeremy. How are you?
Morning. A little groggy, but I'm okay.
Was it a party night last night? Oh boy, fun.
Yes. I mean, it's a party night last 2 nights, so just going to, I got to see my first concert, like real outdoor concert with like a stage and real PA and everything on Friday night, and that was amazing.
Who did you see? You've told me, but I forgot. I'm sorry.
It's a Richmond band, funk band called Butcher Brown. I would highly recommend them. They were on NPR's Tiny Desk very recently.
I love Tiny Desk.
Yeah.
Listeners,
they're a good group.
If you're unfamiliar with NPR's Tiny Desk, just Google it and check it out. It's fun. Yeah.
Yeah. And then last night I saw the drummer in my band, his other band played, so check them out.
Nice. How was that?
It was good. It's they're a very, very good specimen of the jam band variety. Like they do a really, really, really good job in that genre, and I can appreciate
what variety?
That. Jam band, like Fish, Grateful Dead.
Jam band. Yeah. Okay. Got it.
That's kind of like where I started cutting my teeth in music, way, way back in the day. So I've kind of always had a little toe dipped in the hippie world,
We all have our vices.
Yeah. Well, it's what introduced me to electronic music,
Yeah. Okay. So. Interesting. My friend, we're in the middle of a serious heat wave up here. Yeah. Yesterday was the first time I had experienced, and you're probably going to laugh because I think you might be used to this. I don't know. You tell me, but we had it was 100 degrees out here for the first time in a while. And today we're supposed to get up to 105, 109. And I forgot what that feeling is like when you've got the hot air and that sun directly on you, when you can quite literally feel your skin burning, that slow roast. I completely forgot what that was like. And this is coming from a guy who taught for a couple years in Arizona in the summer, an outdoor performing group where you're rehearsing in the Tempe, Phoenix area in the summer. Yeah. So I've had it hotter, but still, you forget what that's like, man.
And I would imagine that up in the Northwest, you got the humidity to deal with too.
Well, typically the humidity isn't a big deal because it's so cool that, and it's not East Coast humid. What's nice about all the rain and the Cascades and the Rockies, they pull so much moisture out of the air, but it is, the higher the heat you get, the more it allows for humidity to remain in the air. So it is a little more humid than usual, but
that's still what gets us out here is the humidity.
And that is why I will never again live on the East Coast or the South or no way, Jose.
Yeah. I've been to Albuquerque, Santa Fe. I've witnessed how hot it can be, but when it's dry, it's a complete, I'm not going to say it's better or worse. It's just completely different.
Yeah. I still laugh when people talk about Arizona's occasional 116 or 120 degrees and yeah, but it's a dry heat. It's like, yeah. Screw you.
So is the oven, right?
So is the oven. Yeah, exactly. The oven is a dry heat, my friend. So,
desiccating heat.
Yeah. But boy, there have been some hot days I've had experienced in the, just in the South where it's been, 100 degrees or 95 degrees, 95% humidity, kind of those, 1-to-1 matches. And it is no fun. It is no fun. So, anyway, Anyway, so we've got a nice hot day planned, and the AC is going to be on most of the day. I hope it stays on. I hope it works all day.
I was going to say, I'm praying for your power grid, man.
Yeah, it's certainly under stress right now, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's all. That's all I got over here. So
yeah.
But today, looking forward to, as usual, looking forward to our conversation today. We decided on a title of The Pitfalls of Service. And listeners, just for some context, I was doing some cigar night with my brother, and I threw out the idea. We were talking about something, and I threw out the idea, what happens when you tie your identity to an idea? When you latch your self-worth, your reputation, all of that to an idea, and not just a being, but being something or someone centered around whatever it may be. What happens when the idea is found perhaps to be incorrect, yet you've tied your entire existence to this idea? And just for some fun, more context, we were talking about the nutrition world. There's one guy out there named Gary Taub who's written a couple books on what's called, I think it's called the insulin theory of I'm going to read from Wikipedia. He's written a couple books. His central hypothesis is that carbohydrates overstimulate the secretion of insulin, which causes the body to store fat. Simple enough. I think I've heard that before. But for poor Gary Taub, there's another nutrition PhD out there named Lane Norton, who's fantastic. But Lane takes issue with Gary Taub. And Lane says, hey, Gary, insulin's not an issue. It's pure calories in versus calories out. In other words, are you burning all of the calories that you're taking in every day? That is what causes the body to store fat if you have that surplus calorie intake. So my brother and I, we were just kind of spitballing back and forth, and poor Gary has he seems to have tied his being to this idea, this insulin theory of body fat storage. He's tied his idea. Now, he will not change his opinion, no matter what amount of research comes out. It sounds like this guy will not change his opinion. And so that got me thinking, boy, that sucks. What if this guy is completely wrong? You know, he's written a couple books that I'm sure have helped a lot of people, but who is he helping? Is he spreading what he believes to truly help others in the face of evidence that he may be wrong, that he may be incorrect? If he digs his heels in more and more into this idea, and he's wrong, is that truly a service to others' path? Or is he perhaps not serving others? So that's taking a long story, or a short story long, but that really got me thinking. I've got one more aspect of this, but do you want to chime in, Jeremy, so I don't just hear my own voice?
Well, I just don't have a lot of opinion on this question for one, insulin specifically, right?
Oh, totally.
But I think it just goes to show you that service is a very, very tricky thing. It just is. There are a lot of pitfalls because when we are serving, we are kind of meeting our reflections, and we're trying to see if we can, at the end of the day, we're trying to see if we can see the love in the situation.
Mm-hmm.
And how that love manifests is kind of how kind of polarity plays out in all of this. If what we really see and what we really are attracted to is our image in that mirror and serving the creator as we see ourselves, right? Then that takes us down one polarity. And if we are able to look in that mirror and see a creator that maybe, is not something that's completely recognizable, excuse me, as ourselves, something maybe a little bit different, a little bit out of the ordinary, what we wouldn't expect, what we may not even approve of. but we can see a need to be filled that could, complete the creator. That's when you can use that mirror to serve others and go down that polarity. So you are going to serve. It's a question of how.
Mm-hmm.
It's much more about a choice of how to serve than a question of whether to serve.
Mm-hmm. As we were working down that line of conversation, my brother started talking about an area that he is quite passionate about, and that is just in general personal growth and development. And, he's gone through some coaching programs like executive leadership and executive coaching programs. And he brought up a point. He's like, imagine that you get someone who comes to you and says, boy, I have a problem managing my time. I don't have time for my family. I'm always working. Help. My brother could go in there and say, well, here's a calendar. Use your calendar. Make sure you cut it off by 6 p.m. Make sure you get your at least 7 hours of sleep, drink 16 ounces of water a day or 16 glasses of water. Well, he could just come out with a recipe list of here, this is what you need to do. But is that going to help that other person? Your dictates as far as what here's the recipe. It is entirely likely, and I think this might be some of the things you learn in a coaching program, that doesn't typically work. That person needs to come to their own realizations of what they can do better in their life, in their schedule, whatever it is they're trying to fix. They need to come to those lessons internally. And it is the coach's, if you want to call it, job to guide the person to those realizations. So the coach doesn't necessarily come in with a recipe list, an instruction manual. They come in with questions, and using those questions kind of guide that person in to come to their own realizations.
Yeah, it's kind of like, haven't you spoken in an earlier podcast about the 5 whys technique of figuring out need?
I'm glad you remember that, Jeremy.
Yeah.
Yes, I love the 5 whys.
It plays a huge role in my job of software development because we're always concerned with not building the grand doohickey that the CEO dreamed up in the shower, but getting down to what the underlying needs are that motivated that, and then figuring out what the cheapest way to do to meet the need, not to build the preconceived thing that you thought would meet all the needs, but you're just making it up, right? To go through a systemic process of getting down to the core need and understanding all the things that we might not be looking at that could be crucial. And I think that's very similar to how you can serve. You're absolutely right that the good coach does not give necessarily a prescription, although a prescription might be a way to whittle down what that person's need is. Remember, the watchword of third density is confusion. It's not necessarily malice or like always good-heartedness, but just confusion. And it's important to remember in the questions of service that we don't come to it seeing through completely clear lenses at all. We have to have forgiveness for ourselves and others. But that once we do that, once we can free ourselves to serve, by freeing ourselves from the self-rejection that would come from ever failing, since we know we're going to fail, at least sometimes, then we can go out there and we can have a dialogue with other people. We can work with them. We don't come there with expectations prefabricated in our mind of what it means for us to have served or not served. We go in there and we listen for the real need. And sometimes that isn't said vocally. But the more that I read Confederation material, the more I see Confederation entities putting a challenge in front of third density folks, wanderers particularly, which is you need to be able to work on your intuition, not so that you can be a very, very, very intuitive person, but so in those moments where the need is crying out for the ears that can hear it, right? Mm-hmm. You can be there to hear it. And when I'm saying crying out for the ears that can hear it, right, I'm saying like they may not be saying it. They may be cussing you out, right? And so it's this very delicate thing of like, when is it a matter of abrogating free will to serve and when is it not? When is the service requested and when is it not? That to me is the number one pitfall, right? Mm-hmm. Because what your coach was doing was trying, you can lay out this recipe, but the question is, does the person who's asking for the service want those specific things?
Exactly. And who does it? My brother said, this is what keyed off this whole thing. He's like, who does that help? If a coach giving that recipe, that's not going to help the other person. But you know what it'll do? It'll make the coach feel better.
And
that right there, I think, is the crux of the issue, is who are you serving? Now, this is not service to self from a confederation standpoint that you are looking to enslave others, okay? But it is not service to others. Making yourself feel good about serving others, it should not be the goal. And
right, it should be a side effect.
Exactly. But unfortunately, I think, at least from my perception, a lot of people that are gung-ho about, serving and saving the world, and I'm sorry I've used that tone of voice, but these have these grandiose dreams of doing and being. It's really all about making themselves feel better about something that's going on in their life. Maybe they're insecure about whatever. This is what I see, oddly enough, friends, in the financial world, managing people's money. Because what people say and what they do with their money are often very different. And I tend to think people vote with their dollars more than they do with their voices. So I see firsthand how people's actions are quite often covering mechanisms to help them feel better about something or whatever. But who does your service help? Is it really there to help others, or is it to make you feel better? Now, I'm not attaching judgment to either of those. I simply want to discuss today, if you are a person who does truly want to serve others, and you're okay having that good feeling as a side effect, not as like the primary driver of your service, well, how do you do that? Because from my perspective, all that a lot of people have as far as how to serve is that internal feeling as a gauge of whether or not I'm doing it right. Okay, I feel really good about doing this. Therefore, if I'm going to trust my emotions, maybe I should keep moving forward with that. But I think that can cause a misapplication of how you're serving, at least based on the Confederation philosophy.
Oh, it absolutely can. I mean, in fact, it's designed to. If we are to trust these authorities, right? Or, friends.
Yeah. I still think of I think of that quite often now that we read that, last week or the week before, that it is a design. It is a feature, not a bug of third density, that we are confused, that we never see ourselves as perfect. It's built in. I think of that so often now.
We are in some ways very efficient in third density. We use every part of the experience. If we can polarize by it and serve successfully, then great. That moves us down across the spectrum towards service to others. But if we get confused, if it causes catalysts within us, then that is something we can use as well to work on ourselves so that next time we can be ready to do the service. I mean, we use every part of the experience. It's all cleanly burned up.
And I think that brings up a good point, that if you are on the path, there really is no wrong turn. Because as you've said, it will all be catalyst. Whether you're doing it efficiently or not, or quote unquote correctly or not, you're going to get something out of it if you've made that choice to be on the path. Because your brain's going to be set up just a little bit differently to perceive things and to feel things. You're going to have a different vocabulary laid on top of all of this, and so I think you made a great point right there. You're going to use it.
And before you've made the choice, you're going to use all of the experience, right? Because sometimes you're going to serve and sometimes you're not. Sometimes you're going to get the feeling and sometimes you're not. All of this is going to be grist for the mill as you reflect upon your experience. There is a point. I mean, I think isn't it the case for you as it is for me that when you have a discrete experience that you might apply the label of awakening to, right? This discrete experience that you draw a line in the sand. But like all the stuff that led up to it was instrumental in creating that. All of the stuff you did before you awakened is one with that awakening experience and everything that comes after it. So there is a real efficiency to experience in this way. It all helps forge the statue that we're building in third density and fire. It all hones it in these crude ways that then we spend the next 3 densities at least refining this basic character of soul that we're building.
I like that. I wanted to start. So what I've got on my plate are 2 recent sessions that were on the Living, Love, and Light podcast. These are sessions that are back in the 80s, but these are 2 sessions that mention either service or healing. And I wanted to go through them because I think each of them hit a different point. I think Latwii is answering both of them. And as Carla channels Latwii, she tends to do it with a sense of humor. So, which I love. It keeps these fresh. But this first one I got is from May 18th in 1980. And again, it's Carla channeling Latwii. This is in the question and answer session. And a questioner asks, how can we help people to get through these heavy times we are going through? Latwii responds, I am aware of your question, my brother, but it is so general that we have to go and collect $200. You can only help those people who ask for your help. That eliminates a large number of people. Thus, you must not worry when you cannot help people. Help is only appreciated if it is requested. Unwanted help is unnecessary help, and it will not help, but only interfere, for all have a sovereign free will. And no matter what occurs in this physical illusion, there is an infinity of time for each entity to learn and understand the truth. And I'll do the first pause there. The first, which is almost self-evident, is you can only help, or help is only appreciated if it is requested. Yes, I don't know if anyone out there has that friend who just constantly feels nosy because they're constantly trying to solve your problems, or they're constantly giving you advice. And it's supremely annoying. I don't think I have any friends like this. I have acquaintances who really feel like they need to always offer their opinion on how to make things better in your life. But I think that's an easy one to connect to.
Absolutely. I would say this concept that it does not really count as service if it's not requested, right? This concept is what was the first thing that I was like, yes, aha. This is, I have to learn more about this philosophy. And, just because I'm one of those people who doesn't want your help most of the time, like I need to figure it out. I don't want something handed to me on a silver platter because then I don't know how to do it, but anyway, like this whole idea, is very, very near and dear to my heart of free will being, the only way that a spirit can truly evolve. If we do hold that we are spirits, then how can we ever dictate how it should evolve? It should be free, blowing in the wind of the Creator and taking whatever form strikes its fancy. And then we're just kind of like 2 levels below that, trying to manifest all of this stuff.
Latwii continues, thus abandon your desire to help everybody. We realize this is not a conscious desire, but it is a common subconscious desire due to the fact that those who seek to know the truth are also those who have a love for other beings with whom they share this planetary surface of yours. A quick note, I love how verbose sometimes they are. When they say, you have love for other beings with whom they share this planetary surface of yours. It's like, okay, just say Earth next time. Come on. But anyways, Latwii continues. There are a few of you whom you may help, and they will ask you for that help. There are as many ways to help as there are requests. Some people may require a smile. Some may require food. There are endless ways to share the bounty and the love of the Creator. If you are able to offer seed thoughts for the promotion of change for the individual who requests it, then you have done the greatest help of all. For the greatest help is a spiritual help. And the spiritual help can only be accomplished by the person himself, with you acting as a catalyst. Thus, think of yourself as a watershed over which many will flow. There are a few whom you may help with a word, a few with a touch, a few with generosity of food or speech. Whatever is needed, it will be asked for, and it will be a matter of your own understanding as to what you can do to fulfill the needs of those who ask. And another pause. We've got 2 more paragraphs here, but again, it's a great way to pause, or great place to pause. Latwii states, some people only need a smile. Other people need food, but whatever they need, they're going to ask for it. And it might not be explicit. Jeremy, you said this before. It might not be explicit, but I think on a deep level, we can... this is tough.
If the need that they express, even non-verbally, bothers us, causes us pain, discomfort, the aversion of the eyes. I mean, who comes to mind in this case but homeless people, right? That we, as a society, seem determined to pretend don't exist. And when you can make eye contact and really see what's needed, it isn't always money, right? It isn't always like something material, but, if you're there and able to perceive it without having to protect your own heart, then you have the basis for making some sort of reasonable judgment. And it is a judgment. It's a gamble, right? At the end of the day, you don't know what somebody needs.
You're right. Jeremy, let me interject, because I used to work in San Francisco, and a number of times I'd open up the building in the morning. It was a small building in the financial district, and a homeless guy would be sleeping in front of the door. It'd be 5:30 a.m., 6 a.m., and I'd wake him up. And if I'm going to be candid, going into the city, I never looked forward to it. I don't think a single day I looked forward to getting off the BART, Bay Area Rapid Transit, walking to the building, because you do have to avoid human feces. You got to look down when you're walking. And it's not just homeless people that are out there. It is the homeless people that typically are out there are addicted to drugs, or there's a serious mental health issue. They're on the street. They're not mentally taken care of. But I never looked forward to the challenge. However, every time I got to this one guy, and it was the same guy, every time I got to him, the closer I got to him, the quicker my attitude would change. And I quickly went from trying to address an idea of drug addiction and mental health issues and just a burden upon society, to every step I take, oh, here's a person. Here's another step I take. Oh my gosh, does this guy's dad worry about him? Is this guy cold? Whatever. And I'd get up there and I'd be polite. I'd wake him up, and this dude always woke up in fear. I gently put my hand on his leg. He'd always wake up like he was waking up from a nightmare. And I'm like, hey bud, I'm sorry, but I got to open up the building and I got to ask you to leave. And I'd say, I'm going to go get some coffee, and I'll be back in about 5 or 6 minutes, so take your time, And he'd always ask, hey man, can you get me some coffee too? He'd be like, sure dude. But that, I bring that up because that was just my own internal struggle with, on the surface thoughts, my surface thoughts. Homeless people are annoying to me. It's not the homelessness per se, right? It's the drug addiction. It's many people in San Francisco, if you don't know this, make a choice to be homeless. There are programs that you can get into in the Bay Area, but it does require that you're clean. And there are quite a few homeless people that are not willing to make that leap. There's a serious mental health issue that I have no idea how to tackle. And then there are certainly some that just the economy in the Bay Area is completely messed up. It's if you don't have a lot of money, you don't got a place to live, So it's a complex issue. Now here's the problem. Here's a problem. So often, if you don't recognize that the homeless issue is not simply about someone not being able to afford to live, and you go in and you want to help, and you're like, okay, I'm going to give this person money. I'm going to give this person money. Quite often, you're supporting a drug habit. And that's a sad reality. It's a sad truth. But that service might make you feel better. And they are asking for it. You are literally feeling their desire, their ask. But that has a complex outcome, because it is true. Quite often you're serving a drug habit. So this is the whole concept of service can be so complex when you really get down to some of these tougher scenarios.
Yeah, when we want to serve with precision, right?
Yes.
If we could know what was really needed, 100%, no doubt, right? Then we wouldn't be learning something new about the Creator. If we already knew. Like, that's the thing. It's like when you feel the friction of this world, that means it's working. That doesn't mean that there's something wrong. We have to remember that over and over and over again, this sense of wrongness that comes, I believe, from our animal evolutionary history. Of that wrongness was kind of like a way that we were able to crudely decide what behaviors were good, what were bad, what would get us killed, what would allow us to eat. And and we've brought that with us, and society has kind of formed itself around these normative ideas of good and bad, right and wrong. And surely there are rules to follow that are useful rules. But at the end of the day, we can't know any of this stuff for certain. And so it's very, I think, probably a good aspect of service is humility. The ability to recognize that what is important is the free and open sharing of the open heart, free and open sharing of self, and that how that manifests might not even seem like service at all. It could manifest in not saying a word to this person or looking at them at all. I mean, like, it could manifest as, giving them everything you have. Who knows? Except to the extent that you have decided to surrender yourself to the Creator and to make yourself an instrument of that Creator, and to unblock the channels of communication between your higher self and your spirit through your mind into your body, so that you can be that little tiny pinky of the Creator that just nudges something one way and it changes everything, right?
I'm interested to experience what it's like when I go back, now that the city is reopening, and the company I work with is still in San Francisco. So I'll be visiting there quarterly, trimesterly. I'm going to say that word, trimesterly. I'm a little bit excited to go back, because when I was working there and living in that area, I didn't have this template, the Law of One template, the Confederation template. I didn't have this worldview. And so I'm quite interested, and I'll share that there's one altercation, if you want to call it that I had with the homeless person that I am not at all proud of. It just sits with me wrong. I was walking up through Chinatown to jiu-jitsu, and this one guy, I mean, clearly not something, it's clearly not well in the head, had serious mental health, but then dude just got all up on me asking for change, and I shoved him away. And for some reason, that really bothers me. Well, I know why it bothers me. That was not the right way to treat a person, and to recognize that, this person needs help, and I was not being the light that I'm trying to be, so, but I'm a little bit excited to go back and to experience, how you view a place, that has not changed. But when you have changed, or you feel you've changed. So I'm excited to get back. I digress a bit, but I think the homeless issue is a kind of a great microcosm of the issue at hand here of how to serve, yeah.
I think my rule is that, you get to say no when it comes to giving people things. I don't believe unless you can say no, you can't say yes, right? But I do think you have to be able to behold it. You have to be able to look at it. You cannot avert your eyes, because then you're cutting yourself off from the information source that would guide you, right? And that's often what we do. So this goes for all aspects of our lives, not just this one issue. Reality, this is something Pema Chodron talks about. Reality is trying like hell to get through to us. The real reality, right? And we are constantly averting our eyes. We're constantly distracted with something. We get fixated on something. And all we have to do is wake up to what's all around us. And this is why we meditate. We do not meditate, Pema Chodron says, to become better meditators. It's not, a vanity sport. It is something that we do so we can become more awake in our lives. That is the application of the lessons of meditation, and that is where we take the fruits of our learning to, in order to not just have things happen to us and have, I had an experience, then I had another experience, but to ground these experiences. You see, there's something about the way that we process what happens to us that can yield deeper or more shallow fruits to the Creator. What we want to do, and this is where the balancing exercises come in at times, is to seat the most processed, the most owned, the most thought about and love given to. I'm word salad here. But we're trying to treat these experiences with care, knowing what secrets and what treasures they hold. And if we can take them into meditation and really sit with them and get the full 360-degree spherical flavor of them, rather than just, this thing happened and this made me feel this way, but really seating it down, seeing all sides of it, seeing how we could have responded one way, we could have responded another way. Both of those responses are within us. Both of those ways of looking at it are within us, right? All of these things are in us. They're not really out there at all. If we can seat this down, then we can really learn these things in a way that sits in our consciousness and doesn't go away. It processes it, right? It filters out the dross, the details of the event that don't really matter. It's that emotional heft, that emotional thread that runs through it, that love that runs through it that we're trying to get to. And you can't do that in the moment. Not very well.
Wonder what would...
If you can, it's because of processing you've done long ago, right? You're not going to make a change right now unless you have one of those quantum leap experiences, right?
Sure. I wonder what catalyst or what learning is available if one were to meditate on why you avert your eyes, because that is a common thing. Things make you uncomfortable. Something's going on inside, and that's an interesting flag that if you were to latch onto in meditation or however you resort to introspection, food for thought.
Yeah.
Food for thought.
It's great thing to meditate on. Yeah. Things that make you uncomfortable. I think Pema Chodron tells a story about how she had a teacher who said they were talking to like third graders or something like that. And one of them asked one of the masters, "What do you do when you get scared?" And the master was like, well, my teacher taught me to go to places that scare me and to talk to people that scare me and to do things that scare me. And he told a story about, they were visiting this monastery and there was this dog on a chain that was like going nuts and like, red eyes, blue spittle tongue, like just going nuts. And they just walk right by and then the chain breaks and dog runs after the master and his colleagues, and the colleagues run off and the master turns and runs right at the dog, and the dog just turns tail and takes off. But it is an interesting thing of like leaning into the pain, leaning into the thing that is making you hurt, and recognizing that it's telling you, it's giving you good information, it's giving you a good lesson, and that the hurt is this is a big thing for me. The hurt doesn't mean there's something wrong. It just means sometimes things hurt.
Oh, that is a whole nother episode we should put on the docket. That is gold. That's a gold mine right there you just opened. Hurt does not mean it's wrong. Yeah. It does not.
Because that's why we, at a root level, I think that's, if you want an intellectual explanation, that's why we avert our eyes. Mm-hmm. The meditative lesson that we would get from contemplating that we can't talk about on this podcast would be the emotional thing that fills it out into a full sphere instead of just being this little point, right? Yeah, well, this is why. Well, the why is only the smallest surface of the explanation. The real explanation is all of the emotional, the heart-based stuff that's going on that we're terrified of. We're terrified.
It's almost as if you were to go through life and wonder, oh, what lessons am I to learn? What did I set up for myself to, tackle while I'm here? Well, why don't you focus in on all that stuff that makes you feel uncomfortable, or those barking dogs,
It's like going to class, taking your seat, facing the back of the room and saying, all right, what do we have to learn today? Right? Like, come on, man.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Good metaphor or good analogy. Okay. Well, let's finish this up one. Let's finish this up. Latwii states, they continue. We ask you to remember that the Creator's supply of love, whether it be food, caring, thought, words, or any deed, is completely and totally infinite. So that if you are a channel for love of the Creator, you do not have to worry about running out of steam or being unable to help in one way or another. You need only to work upon yourself so that you are a clear channel, unmoved by the ridiculousness of many situations, and in great humor when others find a situation quite grim. For you see, you dwell in the midst of a great cosmic joke and a great cosmic tragedy. And the ability to see both polarities of this truth equally is a very helpful one in dealing with yourself. And when you have dealt with this polarity within yourself, laughing at your grief, and solemn in your joy, you may be of balanced help to others, for you may not then be touched by their difficulties to the point where you will be unable to respond in the way the Creator within you would respond. And you're nodding your head, and I nod my head for multiple points on that paragraph, but please, you go first.
It's just always nice when it confirms what I was anticipating.
When it really resonates.
Well, yeah, but yeah, I just felt like they were backing me up. That's all. That's a nice feeling.
Gotcha.
So there's a few ideas here that I'd like to explore, especially in light of the pre-Ra Confederation channeling, because I think they talk a lot about this. So one idea is they say, you can't necessarily, I don't know if they say this outright in that last segment you just talked about, but they often talk about, hey, if you're serving from your own personality and your store of love, what you've been able to cobble together, you will not have enough.
Yes.
Right? You don't have enough love in and of yourself to serve the way that the Creator would have you serve. The only way that you can do it is if you open the channel. If you open the channel to the Creator and you let their love, its wisdom come through you, not as something that you then own as a ego, but as something that you are just an instrument for. And that is how we can serve freely, without any stint, is by recognizing that, all we have to do is get out of the way and let it come through us. And that puts us in a situation where it's not going to serve our ego. In fact, we may look like ass when we do it, right? But at the same time, is it about you? Is it about making yourself feel good, or is it about being there in that way that the creation needs you? You see, another thing that they talk about in the pre-Ra channeling that I like once in a while is they talk about service as this is the nature of a unified creation. The nature of creation is of one part of the creation serving another part. This is not something that is new in the creation. This is something that is already occurring all the time. And that when we are channels for the Creator, when we are serving in the way that is actually requested of the other part of the creation that we are apprehending, we are simply participating in this ongoing intercourse between the creation. Mm-hmm. It's not something like, we can think of it as like, oh, I did the thing that I needed to do. But at the end of the day, you're trying to get yourself out of the way and just be there as you need to. And then observe, learn. If something touches you, if it hurts you, if it bothers you, reflect, use it.
Amen.
One more point, if I may. The point of the light touch will be coming up again and again and again in Confederation material. This is a kind of humor and an ability to not take stuff too hard that allows you also to serve and to be a portion of the Creator serving another portion of the Creator. When you know, what do they say humor is? It's tragedy plus time, right?
That's great.
And so everything that's tragic, it also has a humorous side to it with enough perspective. And I often think that, you know, when we tap into the Creator's greater nature, we are expanding that perspective on creation out so that we can take in maybe a little bit of, we can factor in that Creator's view of time. And maybe the thing that seems like heartbreaking, you know, with enough time, with enough perspective, we can understand how at the end of the day, we are protected, we are loved, we are cherished by the Creator, and that what we go through in such a sometimes horrendous illusion might seem like a joke if you knew how precious you actually were and how much the illusion was foiling, you know, the truth that you know. Yeah, just a few thoughts. I think all of these parts come from like pre-Ra Confederation channeling a lot, and I really like the message. And I like messages like those that really give you perspective.
I agree.
You know?
I completely agree. My best friend lives in Boston. He started a real estate brokerage firm a few years ago, and he's already doing very well. But he not only is he's brilliant, but B, this guy has got a sense of humor that he sees the comedy in so much. And it's something that I envy in him. Because with that spirit, things just tend to work out for him. Always for the best. Doesn't mean he doesn't go through crap like everyone else. But he always just takes it with a great dose of humor. He can see the funniness in just about everything, and it's just something I envy because he's just, you know, he always seems to be so happy. So that's how that one connects with me. You know, it's doesn't matter what you're going through. Can you see the comedy in it? And on the flip side, you know, can you how do they put it? Laughing at your grief, solemn in your joy. You know, there's two sides to those coins. So
yeah, what I'm hearing is the balance, right?
Balance.
To be able to bring, once events don't simply have this one character to us, because they are just reflections of what we are expecting to see, what we are anticipating to see. Once we're really open to what reality is telling us, you know, then we can accept that it has all the different characters, not just the one that we choose, right? And the more experience we bring to bear, the more we realize, we know that on a visceral level, we know that we have all of these options in a given experience, and we can appreciate a given experience, not just for, you know, one aspect that we might care about, but the wholeness of it, because we're appreciating the wholeness of ourselves.
To finish this up, Latwii states, There are many who make the mistake of caring without asking how to care of their higher self. Ask that, my brother, and that will be a greater source of information than any arbitrary way of helping that we could give you. You know, the one known as Jesus said, "If you do these things to the least of these, my brother, you do them unto me." That is the secret, my brothers. You and your brothers are one. You are the creator, and he is the creator. Your brothers and sisters, and you and we and the creator are one being, the cells of which sometimes get themselves all mixed up. Let your cell of existence be calm, be joyful, and be one body of the creation. The first sentence in that last paragraph, there are many who make the mistake of caring without asking how to care of their higher self. And you know what's funny? Hatan hits this message so hard in the early recordings, in the early transcripts of the sessions in the mid 70s. Go into meditation asking how to serve, how to best serve. They hit that one over and over and over again. It kind of disappears by the late 70s, but that message was just redundant. So I like that Latouille brings it up again here. Ask that question of your higher self, perhaps in meditation. How do I care? What's a good way to serve? Ask that question. Don't just assume you already know. Ask maybe some 5 whys or 5 whats.
I mean, it's planting a seed in yourself, right? And what would that be called but desire, right? You are forging a desire within yourself that then you can yoke your will to, and manifest what you desire.
Mm-hmm. There's one more transcript I wanted to read, or at least question and answer, and this one's relatively fast. This is from a few months later, in July 27th, 1980. Again, it's Carla channeling Latouille, and the questioner asks, I have a friend who is a psychologist, and she feels that she sees some of her clients while she sleeps, and feels that they might be traveling to her astrally. I'm wondering if it is possible or even natural for those in our healing professions to heal some of their clients while they sleep as well. Latouille responds, there is a subtle difference between what is occurring and what you have said, which we will attempt to give to this instrument. The healing process is, as we have said, caused totally by the patient, with the healer acting as a spiritual friend who, in dialogue, stimulates the patient in the art of realization of the self, and thus the patient begins to mend. During the waking context, much occurs on many levels. There is much disappointment due to the fact that each patient expects the healer to be wiser or better than the patient. This is not so, for we are all children along the same path. These disappointments, when understood correctly, can break through great blocks which have blocked the growth of the individual spiritually, mentally, or physically. When the patient begins to understand the vulnerability of the healer, begins to feel the friendship of two pilgrims on the path, he can then begin to forgive others for disappointments in the past and begin the self-healing process that starts with the soul and only ends with the body. And I'll end it there. But there's a few great parts in there. The first is that the patient heals the patient. The healer doesn't necessarily heal the healer doesn't heal per se. The healer guides the patient to their own self-healing. And that message comes up in various forms, in various articulations, so many times. I love it.
Yeah, it's very similar to how the last reading was talking about service, right?
Totally. Totally.
It seems that there is a there's a continuity between the concept of healing and the more generalized concept of service.
Mm-hmm.
I've been noticing that in the stuff I've been reading too.
And then Latwii says a sentence. When the patient begins to understand the vulnerability of the healer, begins to feel the friendship of two pilgrims on the path, he can then begin to forgive others for disappointments in the past and begin the self-healing process that starts with the soul and ends with the body. In other words, when people disappoint you, you're able to forgive them. But it's brought up in other places, either in this transcript or in other transcripts. When you disappoint others, can you forgive yourself? Or can you forgive others for their... People attach a judgment to someone feeling disappointed about them. Can you forgive that other person for feeling disappointed in you and understand where they come from? That alone is so deep. So much of this, we can take it so deep if we have the, if we have the time or the ability. But these are two recent sessions that hit home this same kind of theme, that so much service, healing, whatever you want to call it, is personalized. It's not one size fits all. I'm not here to... This whole podcast, the whole idea, the theme in my mind for this was not to provide solutions. It was to just talk with my friend Jeremy. And perhaps others can grab little tidbits that are helpful in their own path, in your own personal journey, because my journey is different than yours is different than mine, listener, yours is different, everyone is different. And I was just hoping that our conversations might be able to help someone else, the same way that these transcript conversations have helped me.
Exactly. There needs to be more dialogue about this. It needs to occupy our attention a little bit more. That's what we're trying to do, I think, is provide a space for which people who are interested in this information, who think about it on their own, can see a little bit of their reflection in a conversation that other people are having. Absolutely. I have learned so much in such a depth about this information that I don't think I would have really grokked if I hadn't engaged in, now these 12 episodes.
Jeremy, I love how you're using words that I've only learned by reading the transcripts. I didn't know what
grokking.
Grokking. I had no idea what that was. I had to Google it. And then you said the word dross. I had no idea what dross. What? Can you explain what grokking and what dross is for people who are dumb like like me? Am I calling you out? Do you actually know the meaning of those?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, dross, if I'm not mistaken, dross is, there's a word that I probably have gotten because of Carla's vocabulary being used by Quo and other entities. But I see it as an alchemical thing, right? Mm. So dross is what gets burned away so you can get that thing that you're trying to refine.
Perfect.
Dross is like the waste product.
Foreign matter, dregs, or mineral waste, in particular, the scum formed on the surface of molten metal.
Right. And one must recognize that in the Western magical tradition, alchemy plays a big role. It's the basis of chemistry in the scientific world, but it also had a lot of metaphysical import as well. A lot of people say that the search to turn lead into gold was really a metaphor for the transformation of the mind, body, and spirit, right?
Now grokked.
That's from Robert Heinlein's Stranger in a Strange Land, which was a novel about a boy who grew up raised by Martians and then came back to Earth. I would highly, 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 highly recommend it. I think anybody who's a wanderer interested in this information would love that book.
No kidding.
And especially that book, because Heinlein is kind of a right-wing wacko. So some of his books are, they're fun, but they're a little fash, right? If you've ever seen Starship Troopers, you know what I mean.
Oh, okay. I have seen Starship Troopers. Yeah. Interesting.
It's very, very pure.
Yeah.
But also, like, it's almost Well, it's funny because Verhoeven, right? Total Recall, big action director, like took Heinlein's work in Starship Troopers and basically like exaggerated all of the fascism. So like it's more of a comedy now than it is like a real science fiction.
Yeah.
But the book is actually a lot more earnest, right?
Okay. Okay, noted. But grok, the actual word, just means to understand or grasp. Or...
Yeah, it's on this basic level that he was teaching the people of Earth how to understand things on this more fundamental, basic level. It's not just an intellectual understanding, I think is the takeaway, which is, of course, a word that we would find useful, right?
It's one I shall start to incorporate, and I'll probably get some quizzical looks whenever
I use you'll sound like a nerd just like me.
Perfect. Now, now in our, I know you've shared a couple raw quotes.
I did. I'm not sure how useful they are, and I haven't really planned them out.
Well, Jeremy, I tried to find. There was one in particular that I tried to find, and I fear, dear friends, that I might just be completely making this up. That's my fear, because I couldn't find which session this was in, but I had thought that Ra stated, to paraphrase, that one can only help to the point at which they want to or can help. And if someone's desire for help or service surpasses your ability or desire, well, then you need to step away. I'm seriously paraphrasing that. That's the message that I took, and I can't remember where I read it. But or maybe it's in an early transcript that I read this, but I tried to find it and I couldn't find it. But again, the lesson, the message was, serve up to your ability. But the moment that someone is going to ask more from you or of you than you are willing to give, it's okay to politely step aside and say, no, I've reached my, I've reached my limit, or I've reached the place that I want to get to with serving. And I'm frustrated.
It's a very careful balance to achieve, I think. Well, remember that in the raw contact, our ability to withhold service at some level is the only thing that keeps us service to others, entities, especially in densities beyond ours, from completely acquiescing to service to self entities. If you'll recall, they talk about how in service to others, fourth density, fifth density, there's a free giving of love, and for the service to others people, and then for the service to self entities, they're trying to capture that light. They're trying to capture that love, and if you allow them, they would just dominate you. So there is a certain amount of depolarization on the service to others path that is continually occurring as a resistance is registered to these service to self entities, because it is a less pure, the most pure way to handle a service to self entity, somebody who wants to control and dominate you, is to love them so completely that it all is meaningless, right?
Oh, that is unfortunately,
even in the higher densities, this cannot be performed perfectly. And so there is a kind of détente between service to self and service to others. The service to self can't go beyond, they can't resist the love and light being thrown at them. And they're getting just enough resistance from service to others that they can't go any further. Meanwhile, the service to others is actually limited by their inability to fully and truly accept the service to self entity. So there's a kind of a dance going on. And what it does as a function of creation is it maintains a situation where there is always service to self and service to others to choose from. There's always one or the other party to join as you make your choice and as you go through evolution.
That's one idea I struggle with is, well, take the fight against, the Nazis or the fight against communism, shortly thereafter. How does that square the service to others, but that involves killing people who are service to self? I know that I'm not putting this right, but it's like, let's pretend you are on a service to others path. All right. And let's pretend that next week there's a hot war with China, which is, I would say, inarguably the leading fascist state. I would argue they're more fascist than they are communist these days.
I would disagree with that, but okay.
That's okay. In any case, it's a totalitarian society. I don't think that is arguable. China is not. If China were to rule the world, it would be a different place than if the United States would rule the world. You could argue about how it would be different, but it's not particularly a society I would want to live in. I digress a bit, but the point being, if you are on the service to others path and you have a service to self invasion, so to speak, or battle, is there even a place for a service to others being on that battlefield? Because doesn't that mess up your polarity? If you're out killing others, that's not. Who are you serving? I mean, you're serving the people of your homeland. Okay, you can make that argument, I guess, but
you're serving your buddies.
You're serving, yes, but how does that all fit in? Because
Well, let's real quick. Let's put a fine point on this. We are not talking about ethics. We are not talking about morality.
Correct.
We are talking about polarity.
Correct.
They are not the same thing.
Correct.
Right? Because polarity is about your intention. It's not about what the situation is. It's about how you realize its potential. The choice you make of the potential that you seize from that. And they talk about in raw material, in the raw contact transcripts, they talk about how soldiers in war don't necessarily lose a lot of polarity. Because everybody's killing. If everybody's killing, then like it doesn't accept you very much. And all it's about is what choices do you make in killing. Maybe you kill somebody out of mercy because they're so messed up and there's no like medical attention around. I mean, we can ask ethical questions and moral questions, deep moral questions about that. And I could see going both ways on that. But that's not what we're talking about when we talk about polarity. What we're talking about is, what did that person intend? How did he intend to give that free radiation of whatever he could do in that situation that was truly needed? Because very few people are going to ask to be, shot in the head if they're grievously injured.
Yeah.
Also, World War II, for example, was not one thing, right? It was a billion different little dramas, little tragedies, little horrors that were all happening to individual people. All the ways that those individual people saw it, all the different ways that they processed it, all the lessons that they took back, that some of them are probably still thinking about every day. They're harsh. They are savage. But they are also, and I know it just sounds so blasé to say this, but they are the creator. They are the nature of love as well. Love includes that as well. And so our task as seekers, as people seeking to expand our ability to manifest who we truly are and who the creator truly is, our job is to simply wrestle with that, to simply take it into our heart. We don't have to have a specific reaction to it. We don't have to have a specific way that we feel about it. We can feel any way we want, but to accept ourselves for having that feeling is what it's about. How you accept yourself, I think, is a big part of whether or not you choose service to others or service to self. How do the inborn biases in you prefigure you in a moment to look at the moment one way rather than another? And then that choice sets you up for another perception that you'll have of another future event. And then that, right? And you can start to see how like it starts to veer off from just the middle of the road towards this pole or this other pole. And then you have other people who are going back and forth. They're still learning what those biases are that are going to expose themselves. And what they're going to tell this entity that is learning in life, what your destiny is going to be, what your path is going to be in a broad way, right? Because this is all built inside of us.
I think it's a good point, or it's an interesting point at minimum, to differentiate between ethics and polarity. And we go back to one of those early discussions we had about the power and importance of intent, and how that started, it planted the seed in me to start rearranging how I view others' actions versus the intent of their actions, where I used to just apply a judgment to the outcome regardless of the intent. But it started shifting my perception on that within the context of polarity and making that choice, and who are you trying to help, but I'll have to let that one simmer, because
there's one thing I want to add. It doesn't mean, I'm not saying, I can hear people tut-tutting in their mind. I'm not saying outcomes don't matter, right? That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that the intention is the only thing that matters and that you don't have to worry about outcomes as long as you meant well. You can, do whatever you want. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that outcomes are only something that you can truly understand through a process of balancing. They're not something that you can just say, I'm going to go do this. You accomplish that, and then it's done. That is a way that you can live, but it's not a way of using the experience. You see what I mean? So it's what I'm trying to say is I'm trying to de-emphasize outcomes, not because they're not going to be crucial in our lives. I mean, we are going to be judged by the outcomes of our actions. There's no doubt about that. But the issue is how can we have a better relationship to that so that we can use that experience both when it's painful and when it's joyous. That's the whole point, is how can we use this service? How can we be instruments that burn this experience up cleanly, right?
Yeah. There was I think it was in this same transcript that I read from July 27th, 1980. I don't have it in front of me. Actually, I lied. I do have it in front of me. But Latwii the group is asking about like earth changes and what's going to happen. Where's the best place to live if there's a polar shift, or, if the earthquakes happen so that they don't die. And Latwii straight up says that, hey, look, we're not that concerned about your physical survival. We care more about your spiritual evolution and your souls, which are eternal. It's like we could kind of care less about your physical survival, but just makes me laugh trying to incorporate the bigger picture, and I mean the bigger picture for what our spirits are and what we go through in this physical illusion, the cosmic joke and the cosmic tragedy that is the physical illusion. Trying to understand, or at least understanding is, I'm sure, beyond third density, but trying to better try to understand what that bigger picture is. And I'm trying to simmer on the idea that death is not a big deal, in the scheme of things, that it's the journey through life that is the focus. But as a people, we're so concerned about death. Oddly enough, it's always there in the background of our mind. I'm going to die. How am I going to die? Violence, this, cancer, that. It's constantly, it's in our culture.
It's in our bones.
It's in our DNA. Bones. It is in our, yes, it is in our DNA.
And it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay that we feel that way. What we are growing towards is an understanding of ourselves that more and more isn't tied to the details and the idiosyncrasies of this current incarnation, that understands ourselves as a broader principle spanning across lives. That's hard to do, but I don't think we do it by making an intellectual choice. I think we do it because of a deep feeling that we feel about the nature of ourselves and reality. And then when we can truly believe that in some way. Maybe we don't believe in like past lives or future lives or anything like that, but we just believe in the ineffability and in the permanence of the spirit. However we model it to ourselves, it frees us. It frees us from living in fear to the extent that we're able to do it. And then we can do what those of the Confederation ask of us, which is to be there free, and to radiate without stint, without any holding back to the greatest extent that we can, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is the other thing that I think should be pointed out here is that we don't always get immediate feedback that we can use on that, right? A lot of times we want to know whether our service worked or not. Did it hit the mark?
Mm-hmm.
And those of the Confederation tend to say that the more that we open up ourselves as instruments and give freely without expectation, the less we're going to get that feedback directly, and the less it's going to matter, right? I'm thinking in particular of a more recent reading from 2017, December 2nd.
Okay.
And they talk about service in this one. Why don't I just start here? Because I think we're getting towards quitting time. But Quo says, when you open your heart to service of this sort, the kind of open-hearted service that we were just talking about that doesn't have expectations, you do not get much feedback. You will not know whether your service has been for good or for ill. And it will most likely be the case that the one you seek to serve will not even be aware of the service that you have rendered. But take heart, my friends, for when you serve as deeply as you may with an open heart, it is never in vain. For that which seems to miss its mark, nevertheless finds its way to a home in spirit unerringly. Yes, the way of an adept, the way of a seeker of spirit, is an arduous path, and you can feel, if you allow yourself to so feel, that that what you have to offer has no place in the society around you. But so long as you are willing to understand that what you have to offer is not a matter of right thinking, true information, proper perspective, but rather only a matter of simple open-hearted love, there you cannot go wrong. Sometimes I feel like on this podcast, we make it sound more complicated than it actually is, right? We want to get into all those nooks and crannies and all the like little weird edge cases of something like service. But at the end of the day, we can't go wrong if it comes from a place of pure love.
Pure love of others or pure love of self. That, again, I still...
Neither is wrong. So it doesn't matter.
I guess you're right. No, you're right about, again, trying to take the bigger picture of things. And it's all as it's meant to be. It's all a part of the plan, if you want to call it that. I guess I'm coming from a place of trying to be efficient in positive polarization.
We're pretty certain that our listenership shares our polarity that we're pretty sure about.
Yeah.
I think we're both pretty sure, but it's important to keep in mind so that we don't mistake our choice for a feature of the reality, right? Our choice is just our choice.
Yeah.
The creator blinks neither at the light nor the dark, and both are available. And you know, they're in a very deep sense. I think part of the service to others path is coming to grips with that darkness, having the ability to not be fazed by it. We've talked about this before, but that ability to open your heart to that which is truly dark and black and seemingly evil. You know how they talk about feeding your monster, right? Those monsters within your psyche that you try to ignore and that really hold keys to yourself in many core ways. The way that you quote unquote defeat the monster is not by defeating it in battle, but by accepting it into yourself, by giving it a hug, by loving it, right? That's how we take the dark side of ourselves. And the Confederation has talked about this, that, we have that, we talked about in the heart chakra episode, that there's this dark side of yourself that needs to be accepted. And one of the reasons that it needs to be accepted is because that's where a lot of your power is. A lot of your power is in that part of you that you are afraid of.
Yeah.
Because you know it's of consequence, I think. Because you know that it's something that you're not ready, perhaps, to take responsibility for. How much raw, creative power and destructive power you actually have. Once we're ready to grasp that baton and take that on and face that self, we will see that it's just us.
Yeah. Again, it makes me think of two things. The first is a previous thought that we talked about regarding the difference between a harmless man and a peaceful man.
Right.
But I also thought of there's a book series in the that Tom DeLonge, again, is a part of, called Poet Anderson. It's like a young adult series, but the series is about this guy that lucid dreams. And in the book, one of the themes is that when people go to sleep, there's this shared consciousness that everyone takes a part of. And those who can lucid dream are able to remember and kind of control what goes on in that shared consciousness space. But I believe that one of the challenges the hero has to deal with is incorporating his shadow self and battling his nightmare, essentially, in the dream world. But it's a great allegory for dealing with that dark side of yourself and incorporating that, if not incorporating, accepting and integrating that part of yourself and recognizing what it is. And understanding that it is consequential.
And those people that we encounter along the path who scare us, the way to deal with them is to deal with what scares us within ourselves. Right?
Yeah.
And then it doesn't, what did they say in you were just reading from this reading earlier, but like the whole idea is that your response to a situation does not come from a place where you are emotionally trying to shore yourself up out of fear or uncertainty or something like that. You can always be free to radiate. And I really like the way that they say free. They often talk about the freedom that comes from releasing your expectation, the freedom that comes from releasing the need to make this life an outward expression of who your ego thinks it is, right?
Yeah.
Once you let go of that, once you're not holding that over your own head, now you can truly be there for other people, regardless of whether it's flashy or not, regardless of whether it's what you even like or not. Right? You get this freedom to be there in just the way that's needed. And this is what I think, the Master Jesus talked about when he said, take on my yoke, it is light, right? Like take on true freedom comes from serving the Creator, straight up. Like that's the quote says that too. That is what true freedom is. True freedom is service, but it's service that you understand you're taking on, and you understand that it reflects your deepest nature and reflects your place in this creation, of every part of the creation serving each other part. In the same way that an ecosystem is every animal, plant, organism serving every other one to create an ongoing thing. And I think that is a microcosm for how the creation works at just maybe a smaller time scale than the whole dang universe, right? But I really think if there's one thing that I'm taking away from this conversation, it's the significance of the light touch, of the ability to see humor in things. Because if humor really is tragedy plus time, what the light touch and that humorous perspective gives us is the ability to maybe tap in a little bit to the Creator's time frame and to see things on that larger scale, where what we are worried about and what we care about doesn't really play such a big role. Not that we shouldn't care about things, but like, what is balance? What is self-discovery? But learning all the different parts of yourself and how they give you different ways of looking at things. And they're all part of you. It's not about finding the right one. It's about accepting all of them, as many as you can. Does that make sense?
It does. Did I understand you correctly when you were talking about service without ego? And like that's the efficient way, or that's a solid way is...
With the ego is an instrument rather than a director, right? That's what I mean. The ego is like, right? Like, I would love to be able to run to Columbus, Ohio on my feet, but I need a vehicle for that. The vehicle is just a means, right? And so that's the way to look at the ego. Ideally, is that it's just your personality construct in a world of personalities.
Some's idea of service to others is simply a facade for developing or boosting the ego. And sure. I kind of like the idea that, the guy who started the duty-free shops in airports, I think he was like an Irishman.
Yeah.
No one's ever heard of him. He could be a billionaire, I think. I read an article. He could be a billionaire, but he's not, because he gives away most of his money. But he does so anonymously. I I think I read this in like a Sky Mall catalog or something ridiculous, like the could-be billionaire you've never heard of, you know. But he was the kind of guy that didn't need his name attached to libraries and college buildings, and he just earned a lot of money and gave a lot of it away. And I wonder sometimes when people when people say that they want to help others and serve others, yet they require a bit of recognition, you know, is that requirement kind of a signal that they're moving in the right direction? Or do some perhaps have a again, it's not necessarily that they're serving others. It's you're serving your own ego, your own need for a confidence boost or whatever. So it just makes...
But you can do both.
Well, you can, but it makes me think of... I don't want to say pure... as you can tell, friends, I'm still sorting through these thoughts, so I apologize. But it just makes me wonder as to the purity of your desire to serve. If it's a requirement that you be recognized for the service you provide. I used to be a music teacher, and one of my students' mothers was very into philanthropy. Her husband was extremely successful in his career, and her job was to kind of spend, and donate a lot of the money that family generated. But she essentially required that their name be attached to every gift that they gave. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that per se, but it makes me wonder, what is the true purpose of that service? Is it to develop the youth orchestra in the area? Is it to develop the new library? Or is it so that everyone knows that you're a nice person? That's what went through my head when I'm like, wow, here's a very generous family.
Philanthropy. I mean, we have a special word for it because it has this connotation to it.
That is a very good point, Jeremy Weiland. That is, it's its own word.
Let's not forget the tax benefits that come from philanthropy. How rich people's money can be hidden in like charitable organizations and used for purposes where it might as well be in their own pocket.
Yeah,
it's used for prestige building. It's used to whitewash the crimes of the corporations they might own. Let's just recognize that philanthropy. I was sorry to interrupt you.
That's okay. No, because it was a great point. We do have a word for this. It's called philanthropy.
Yeah, and it has a negative side to it.
It does. I mean, the positives. Let's look at the positives. The philanthropical competition between Rockefeller and Carnegie. It was like a competition who could give away more money but it was tied to prestige, and they had such negative PR. At least Rockefeller with the business practices, and they had such negative PR. I think Carnegie has a. I haven't done my homework on Carnegie. I think Carnegie had a slightly different. Well, he was a little bit different than Rockefeller, but the long story short is both of these men spent a lot of money building very important things for our culture, but they did so attaching their names, and it was really all about ego. It was so much about ego. Yeah. So a
lot of it was, America was at a different point back in that day and needed more education infrastructure, needed universities and stuff like that. It doesn't have to fit in a good or bad bucket. We can just look at all the different aspects here. And then what is important is not the judgment that we make about the situation, but what it tells us about ourselves. What do we want with reflecting on this idea? What do we want? How does that affect our judgment of what might be good or bad service? And, whether we can even achieve that at all, right?
Again, this is why I love talking with you, because you help pull me out of the pigeonhole. My mind starts to put myself in, and you remind me, it's not about good or bad. It's not about this or that. And again, always bringing it back to, what do my feelings about others teach me about me? And the way I avert my eyes. It's like, hey, dude, you're averting your eyes here. why is that? Maybe you should look into that,
Well, isn't it funny how, like, I share the Confederation's sort of obsession with, like, widening the perspective.
Mm-hmm.
You would think as you widen the perspective that the things would get farther and farther away from you, from the little you. But actually, as this perspective gets bigger and bigger, it puts yourself in more and more stark relief, because there's something about your basic perception that cannot be annihilated no matter how big that perspective gets. It's like that big perspective not only takes us away from the details, but it almost gets us back to the core of ourselves.
Great. That's a great way of putting it.
I have a, we're going to be wrapping up soon, right?
Yeah.
I think I have a good quote for us to go out on, because it has to do with this idea about, how do we decide on what our service is? How do we judge service, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you mind if I take it away?
Pretty please.
This is April 26, 92, Carla channeling Kuo. And they're talking about this concept of how do you select your service, what's good service, what's bad. That extreme good judgment of offering only the excellent service is a butterfly too evasive to catch. Better it is to gaze at one's duties, one's responsibilities, one's honors, and the ever-present strangers in one's midst as perfect opportunities for service to the Creator Self, so that service is not scattered among people and places and categories, but rather service is a way of life, expressing the spiritual principle of offering love to one's Creator and Preserver, offering the Self to the Creator Self, and in return feeling the Creator Self pouring through the Self in infinite energy, so that there is always energy for more service, until this way of life becomes, may we say, self-perpetuating, and the life glows with love reflected in love. Now this, we realize, is cold consolation for us to say, do not expect any outcome when you serve, for your desire to serve is that which is irrelevant. Your desire to serve is that which is relevant. This is not emotionally satisfying. We may, however, remind each to think in memory of all the unexpected gifts of service which have moved into manifestation in each of your lives. The bread returning upon the waters again and again, 10-fold, 100-fold, until you cannot count all the blessings which come into the life. Pause. This is related to Jesus' parable of casting your love like bread upon the water.
Okay, thank you.
And then it comes back to you 100-fold. So the energy for these blessings is begun in the self's desire to give of the self. As it gives, it creates an energy which is forever spherical and returns and lifts one higher and higher each time it returns. The way of service is a way of spiritual evolution. To figure out how to be unselfish in an illusion, and a deep illusion, for it is ours also, where service to others is the most efficient of service to self, if one desires to evolve spiritually, is somewhat more marvelous, is it not? Wow, that was a tongue twister. Where service to others is the most efficient of service to the self, if one desires to evolve spiritually, is somewhat marvelous, is it not? Give up. May this bread returning upon the waters be a sign to you. When you see the manifestation of love given to you, hear that consolation, hear those energies being registered in the heart of the Creator's self. For all is one, and as you serve one, those tender and merciful feelings, those gentle and soft kind words, those strong supportive silences move out through whatever bafflement may seem to stop the service into the memory of your entire planetary sphere and become a part of that which is positive about your planet. No good intention, no desire to help is ever lost. Do not let the illusion's disconsolate, apparent nature cause you or any to stumble upon the path of service to others, but let it redouble your desire as you know that all your love has flown to the heart of the Creator Self of this planet and is immediately a portion of the light of the world. Fine. But I did wanted to say, I've forgotten about, let's not forget that there are outcomes that we don't even partake of, we don't even perceive. When we serve others and when we lighten the planet through our service, that redounds to the benefit of a very confused planet that is going through a difficult birth in the fourth density. So it reminds me of this saying, self-work is world work. When we work on ourselves, when we work on how we treat others and learn to use experience more efficiently, we are not just benefiting ourselves. We are benefiting everything around us in an entire planetary project that we are blessed and honored to be part of right now.
And this just hits a classic and core theme of the Confederation material, and that is what the internal work, not necessarily, not always the external work. What are you doing? What are you doing to help others per se? What are you doing to make yourself a better person? It's not always about how you can change the world. Quite often, it's about how you can change yourself.
And they point out over and over that even the smallest pieces of progress that we can make in our lives have effects in the wider world. We actually are in a much more sensitive and participatory planet than we realize, because there's an entire energetic energy system. There's an entire system of energy moving through all of this, and we only see the coarsest, densest condensation of this energy in the material world.
Yeah,
the more that we open up to the nuances and energies within us, the more we are participating consciously instead of unconsciously in this wider energy network, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm tapped. I've all my ideas are gone. They're through the microphone into this recording.
I mean, you're a trooper. I mean, what is it, like 7 a.m. now?
7 a.m.
Where you're
now,
at?
Yeah. Got a good start.
Get your kid up.
Got a good start to the day. Yeah. Another good one, Jeremy. Thank you.
I hope so. Yeah, thank you. I so enjoy this, and it helps me see so many different aspects of things. So,
well,
I've just been so blessed by this whole project.
Amen to that. Amen. And again, I appreciate how whenever I start putting myself into the weeds, you help pull me out. You're like, oh, dude, you're in the weeds. Remember, let's pull.
Next time you get into geopolitics, I'll try to help you out a little quicker.
That's okay.
I don't want to. I'll tell you, listener. I promise. We will never ever debate the pros and cons of Maoist thought in Chinese history. That will never happen.
Never happen.
It's just not an appropriate conversation for us to have.
Yeah. No, we'll stick to the group meditations, channeling discarnate beings, or incarnate in a different dimension. We'll stick to that. So
incarnate somewhere.
Yeah.
it's incarnate somewhere. It's 5 p.m. somewhere.
Yeah. I will say, maybe on just to plant the seed for a possible future episode, that where does group cohesion, group dynamics, how does that fit into all of this? Because our political structure, our governmental structure, our societal structure, all of that is I would say an outgrowth of, over time, our organizations. And it would be a good thought, or a good thought exercise, or something to just ramble on about and spitball. How does this all fit together? Because for so many people, at least in today's culture, this has become, I'm going to say for worse, it's become just so consequential. Kind of the political dialogue is so vitriolic. And it would be an interesting conversation to discuss how some of these themes tie into the group dynamic, and that yellow ray talk.
I was going to say, we're just revisiting the yellow ray.
Yeah, it would be interesting.
And not just yellow ray, but like where on the spectrum, closer to orange or closer to green, do you fall in that yellow ray, right? Because you have these like people who are like super tribal, even in yellow ray, because they remember that pack mentality from orange ray. And then you also have the people who are individuating and seeing, love as the new tribe, right? Like love as the new, as like the planet tribe. As the new tribe, right? Sure. Yeah. So I would love, if I can keep my own politics out of it, I would love to talk about that.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I have it so mixed up in my head nowadays. I'll figure it out.
I think
I have a lot of excerpts saved about group work, because it's been something I've been looking into for this Other Selves working group project I've been working on.
That'd be a good one to discuss. I think that would be a good one to discuss. And honestly, I don't think this show is about us hashing through our personal opinions and perceptions and maybe rubbing up against, feeling that friction and helping to refine. So I don't think there's an issue with just you being you, me being me, and having a good conversation on and trying to sort through some pretty challenging topics, I would say, because I still struggle with the idea, what do I do if a war breaks out? I want to serve my country, I want to protect my neighbors, but I don't want to kill people, but it's like, and how does that, and I don't want to come back and do this all over again and again and again. So what do I do? So it's fun to think about.
What would the Confederation say in response to that question?
You know what, Jeremy? We need bracelets. We need those bracelets. Instead of what would Jesus do, it would be like, what would the Confederation say? We should, WWC.
But it's always one thing. It's always one thing, man. It never changes.
What is that?
It's meditate. Meditate. The answer is within.
Meditate, yes.
Just don't let your anxiety about a future ground war in Asia, pull you off the path, man.
I hear you. Well, we could keep going. We should cut it off, my friend. Will you again do the honors?
As always, stay in the love and light, friends.